you'll hear myself and other people who teach and talk about spiritual and esoteric teachings. You'll hear us talk about things like spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity from time to time. But these are just two terms that encapsulate some of the ways in which people misinterpret, misunderstand, misuse, and abuse spiritual teachings. Today I want to talk about two specific spiritual teachings that people end up using to sort of abuse themselves. These are mirroring and the emotional guidance system, and specifically two quotes that go along with the emotional guidance system. Welcome back, guys, to another video. I'm Blackwood, your Silicon Valley Sage Sister, here to bring consciousness to the forefront of your daily life to make life a little kinder and simpler. Here on another car ride riff, as it were. I get in the car and listen to my spiritual mentors talk, and that gets me thinking, which gets me talking to you guys. So let's start with mirroring. Mirroring is a spiritual teaching where you take your thoughts and how you think specifically about other people and look at how you might be projecting onto others, or your thoughts about others might reflect onto you what they might reflect about you. So, looking at the fact that if you're judging someone else, for instance, about, I don't know, their weight, that might mean that you're insecure about your weight. Just as an example. Anyway, people will take this concept of mirroring and they'll do one of two things if they're abusing it, which is abuse someone else with it or abuse themselves with it. The way in which people abuse others with the concept of mirroring is, let's say you pointed out to me something that I was doing, and my response back to that was, well, since you think that about me, you should really look at how that reflects on how you think about yourself. You should really take that sentiment that you said about me and think about what that means about you. Now, there is a time and place to do that. But if it's being used as like a clapback, as they say, if it's being used as a spiteful or angry retort, that's abusing the spiritual teaching. And people do that because they think they're so awake and they think they're so spiritually enlightened. But anybody who's doing anything out of anger or spite is not, it's just starting to awaken, let's say. Just starting to even learn about enlightenment. The other way, which is more concerning to me most often, is how people end up using it to abuse themselves. So what happens is, kind of like toxic positivity, people will take this concept of mirroring and they will only ever consider themselves when it's actually appropriate to be considering how someone else is behaving. So, for instance, what might happen is someone's in a relationship and they're in a fight, or they fight often in their relationship, but they're only ever asking themselves about how their thoughts reflect on them. And they're not taking the other person into consideration. They're not taking the other person's actions, words, behavior into consideration because they're so focused on the fact that they're thinking about that person's behavior that they think that they're doing it. other person isn't. So, there is absolutely a time and place to recognize that if everything's going wrong for you, you're the common denominator in that. And maybe it's time to reflect on how you're behaving rather than blaming it on other people. But there is absolutely a time and place to consider how the other person's behaving and whether or not that's okay too. Secondly, I want to get into the emotional guidance system. The emotional guidance system is often reflected in the sentiment of following your joy and staying in the present moment. The thing is that when we in life swing out into the extremes of things, most often that's taking us to an unhealthy place. There's a reason why balanced Blackwood is my thing, is my jam, is my handle for everything. Because moderation in life is very important. Having that balance, walking that line in the middle is important. And so people take this concept of following their joy and staying in the present moment and take it to its extreme rather than considering the nuances of the sentiment and end up hurting themselves. Because, for instance, with staying in the present moment, being present and being in the present moment doesn't mean not considering the future. Being in the present moment and being present, there very, very much can mean being present enough to recognize, being aware of the present moment enough to recognize how it will affect your future. For instance, following your joy doesn't mean just doing what's the most fun right now. Being aware of how something will affect you in the future is very important to following your joy. Because that joy, it's supposed to be sustainable. It's supposed to continue on. It's not just what's fun right now. Let's do what's the most fun right now. That's not what following your joy is about. Following your joy is taking that time to be present and ask yourself, what would make me feel best right now? But also taking into consideration, is this good for me? It's not just about what feels best right now, in that sense of what would be the most fun right now. Eating 12 candy bars could be really fun right now, but in 30 minutes, when all that chocolate hits your system and all that sugar hits your system, you're going to be really uncomfortable. So eating a candy bar right now might be following your joy, but eating 12, maybe not. Probably not. Same goes for all sorts of things. People end up abusing themselves because they think this concept of following your joy means only considering right now what would be the most fun rather than even in general make you the most happy. Because, yeah, taking into consideration what would be best for me right now is very much what following your joy is about. But best for me, what would feel best to me right now, that in and of itself still has to take into consideration, is it good for me? And then making sure that you're present enough in the moment to consider the future. Consider your overall health and happiness. So yeah, there's a reason why, especially when it comes to some of these more nuanced, these more complicated spiritual teachings, it's important to, as they say, meditate on it. There's a reason why coaches, counselors, therapists, mentors are so important to have. When getting into these deep philosophies, things can get lost in translation. Things can get lost because it's been condensed down into this cute little quote that's really, really deep, but you're only taking it for its surface value. People, we have to be careful about this. Taking the time to meditate on it, so to speak, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to sit down with your legs crossed, crisscross applesauce, with your hands in your lap. You know, to meditate on it can literally just mean to think about it. Meditate on it, you know. That doesn't mean you have to go sit on it. Sit on your butt, sit on it. I saw this funny meme of this person new to spirituality, and the person said, take this book and meditate on it. And then the next clip, the next little box was of the person literally sitting on the book meditating. It's really a great example of how people can misunderstand this. And so again, that's why having someone who has been studying these nuanced things for so long that they can help you understand them at not just their deeper levels, but understand how on the deeper levels they actually relate to you personally. That's very important when it comes to these things. That's why I do what I do. That's why I didn't make more courses. I keep talking about this lately, but it's true, because that one-on-one time to reflect and having someone who can help you is really important, especially when it comes to these deeper, nuanced things. So yeah, that's my story for today, and I'm sticking to it. If you guys enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I normally don't like to talk about such things, but I want that custom URL, and I need some more subscribers to get that. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so I can be youtube.com/balanceblackwood rather than youtube.com/randomly generated long and annoying blah blah blah. If you're enjoying this content here on YouTube, check out my Patreon. I have free content, including my bi-monthly energy update, where on the full moon and the new moon, I give you a little energy update for the 2 weeks in between. I have four subscription membership tiers, as they call it on Patreon, to suit anyone's needs. So again, if you're enjoying this content here, go check that out, because Patreon is where I get deeper and deeper into the spiritual teachings. I also have my monthly update, which is going out tomorrow. So if you're not already on my email list, go get on that. I send out one email a month. That's it. And last but not least, if doing the one-on-one thing sounds like something you'd like to do, that last link down at the bottom of the description is my free clarity call, so we can connect and see if one-on-one, and me in particular as a teacher, one-on-one is right for you. May the energy you serve you well, and keep making your way through.